Dasyangana Sadakya Chaksurin Militam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sita Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Suvarutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Radita Shri Vishikhan Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakantana Mostate Jayatam Sharito Pango Mamade Matsavasha Paramboja Radha Madana Mohanam Sriman Rasarasaram Vivam Sivana Karsan Pinaya Gopinata Sriyasanam Divyadvrindarani Kapadumada Srimad Radhagana Shima Shanishto Shri Radha Shidagovanere Prasadabhi Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmani Tayacha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Magaram Guru Raja Magaram Panidi Kaksho Magaraya Tanohri Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Pachodhyate Om Mahadevi Chavidmahi Vishnu Panditi Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Pachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sri Hari Pare Namastubhyam Narayare Tapti Kanjana Gonangi Rare Vindavaneshwari Vishavanasite Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Namam Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutade Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shami Tanamanimaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sundivari Praskita Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday, Brent, Britta. Nice to see you. Chilly morning, she says. Indeed, it's been snowing. We need it in Utah. Jean, thanks for joining us. And on Zoom, we have Dr. Rob as well. We're going to talk more today about the detachment of Ambarish. We discussed his other qualities before I left for Los Angeles. We left the best one for last, is that in a spirit of detachment, the king of Saptadvipa, the 7 continents, in other words, the whole earth, observed the Ekadasi vow for 1 entire year. That is a fast, which one observes. He had observed the fasting not only from food, but also from water. This is in a previous age. People had greater enhanced capabilities than we do now. We went to one of the forests of Vrindavan called Madhavan at the end, 3 days before he was about to break his year-long fast, and absorbed himself in Krishna Lila, thoughts of Radha and Krishna. And just at the moment when he was to take a little bit of food to honor Mother Ekadasi. Ekadasi is the mother of devotion, twice a month on the 11 days after the full moon, 11 days before the dark moon. These are auspicious days during which one is enjoined to fast. And by fasting and pleasing Mother Ekadasi can bestow love of God on you in due course. So Maharaj Ambarish had fasted for 1 year to get devotion, to get bhakti from Mother Ekadasi. But part of the vow, the brata, is to break one's fast exactly at the right titi, at the right moment. So one honors the Ekadasi by fasting, but then one will dishonor Ekadasi if one does not take grains or break one's fast exactly at the right moment. So Maharaj Ambarish, he didn't want to dishonor Ekadasi after fasting for 1 year. And so he prepared to consummate the year-long vow by taking a little bit of food. What should happen? But Krishna's always testing his devotees. Look, consider how he tested Arjuna at Kurukshetra. Arjuna was a champion. He fought many, many battles, curbed lots of miscreants, lots of culprits. In one sense, Arjuna appearing on the battlefield to roll back the forces of darkness was just another day at the office. Been there, done that 1,000 times. But just see how Krishna took it up to the next level. ratcheted it up a notch, that on this occasion, his opponents were his teacher, both his teachers, Dronacharya, Bhishma, and all of his cousin brothers and friends. What a test with capital letters, T-E-S-T. This isn't just a small letter, T-E-S-T. This is a capital letter test. It's a test the likes of which only a pure devotee of the Lord could pass. It would crush anyone else. Anyone else would have post-traumatic stress syndrome for the rest of their lives. They'd be a nervous wreck. They'd never be able to get it together again, no matter what they did, whether they decided to go ahead and fight or whether they decided not to fight, because they'd made the decision on their own and not availed themselves of Krishna's advice and strength. That would be their undoing. But Krishna imposed, you might say, that test on Arjuna because he knew that Arjuna would turn to him. Karpanya dosho pataha praha prachami damdama yaksreya sinishtam sishisteham sarimam tam prapadam. When it got too much for Arjuna, he couldn't say any good from fighting. He couldn't say any good from not fighting. He'd worked it out, gone through all the scenarios, couldn't come up with a preferred alternative. So he turned it over to Krishna. That's what devotees do. When they reach the breaking point, they turn it over to Krishna. They don't break, but they bend in the sense that they turn it over to Krishna. Arjuna said to Krishna, up to this point, we've been talking more or less as equals, as friends. But right now, I'm at the breaking point. And when I come to the breaking point, I put it on the altar. I turn it over to my friend and counselor and well-wisher, Krishna, who happens to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's in everyone's heart, who knows past, present, and future. So who better to counsel you? Not only counsel you in times of crisis, but also whatever power we have comes from him. Na kevalam me bhagavatasaram sabai baram paramachareshwara pare varemishwara brahmadyo yana visham pranam. When Hiranyakashipu asked his 5-year-old son from whence he got his power, Prahlad Maharaj said, I got my power from the same place you do, Dad, place your demoniac generals get from. Everybody gets all their power from the same place, and that's Krishna. Arjuna, being a devotee, was not only going to avail himself of nearby Krishna there on the chariot for counsel, he's also going to be confident that whatever counsel Krishna gives, that will become a fact. We think something, we plan something, we take the first step towards accomplishing a dream, and it's many years, many obstacles, many delays, many difficulties. But when God speaks something or even thinks something, that becomes a fact. His speaking is reality. He never speaks anything which is not a fact or does not become a fact at the moment of his speaking. So Krishna tells Arjuna that you will achieve victory here. You're on the side of righteousness. Righteousness will overcome here with Krishna present, the Lord of righteousness, the battle being fought on a field which is called Dharmakshetra, the place where saints and sages have gone for thousands of years to promote righteousness, to honor righteousness. So Krishna says to Arjuna, fighting is the right thing to do. By fighting, you'll be victorious. And more important, by fighting, you'll please me. And that's all it took. He put aside his own personal scruples and his own personal reservations. And he said, if it's good enough for Krishna, it's good enough for me. So he fought not out of personal considerations of loss or gain, but he fought being attached to Krishna. And because he was attached to Krishna, he achieved detachment from family bonds. It are whatever the bonds of family affection that are the chains which keep us to repeated birth and death in this material world. Not to say that you shouldn't have a family, shouldn't love your wife, shouldn't be a good father and a good spouse. That's important. But at the same time, you have to recognize that you're going to be kicked out. You're going to leave it, it's not permanent. So you have to execute your family domestic duties with detachment. Otherwise, those chains of affection, if you maintain them right up to the fag end of your life, if they're coloring your mind at the time of leaving this body, then you're going to take another birth in another family. And there's no guarantee that your next birth will be in a human family. Might be in a llama family, cat family, might be in a duck-billed platypus family. You don't know. So it is the ties of family affection that are pashum gunam, gunanabhadaba, grihanabhadaba. Pashum means, mritu pashum means the bonds of death. What is it that ties us up to the hip, that joins us with death? And it's grihana badhatam. It are the strands of sneha, family affection. Now, Uddhava, when he visited Vrindavan, Krishna told Uddhava, go console the gopis who are near death, in absence of me, feeling my absence. Uddhava looked like Krishna. He was a personal friend of Krishna. He spoke on behalf of Krishna. Krishna told him what to say. And when Uddhava saw the level of commitment of the gopis, how it was that when Krishna played his flute in the middle of the night, they got up from their marital bed. They walked away from the nursery, some of them, in which their kids were there. And they went to meet with Krishna at the midnight hour in the forest, breaking all bonds of social propriety. But in doing so, they also broke the bonds of death, because when Krishna calls, when Krishna plays his flute, the devotees respond, no matter how much society will condemn them and criticize them for it. Knowing that you and Krishna are a majority. If Krishna is for you, who dare be against you? Put Krishna on one side of the scales, and all the universe with all its mores and all its cultures and all its standards and all its values on the other side of the scale, and Krishna will outweigh everything. Similarly, the gopis, they gave up family, they gave up children in order to, they went back, it's true to say, but they risked everything, which is very difficult to do for Krishna. It means that when Krishna comes, he trumps every other consideration. Sarvadhamam parijeta mame comes at hamdam sarva mokshasam. Krishna says his last and best piece of advice to Arjuna is give up all considerations of family, friends, and country when it comes to the issue of deciding between me, my instructions, my will, and your own so-called personal benefit, your own personal concerns. If you think that in following me, taking door number one as opposed to door number two is going to get you in trouble with your family and friends and country, Krishna specifically says, Aham sarva papibhyo moksha. Don't worry on any other score. If you do the main thing, you keep the main thing, then the secondary things will take care of themselves. Don't worry about it. It's said by Lord Jesus Christ, seek first the kingdom of God. Seek first to do God's building. After all, we're created by his hand. No one creates anything without a purpose for that thing in mind. No one created this laptop computer without specific purposes in mind. No one created the computer without designing it specifically to perform certain functions. So we are not ultimately created as a father, as a husband, as a spouse, as an employee, as an employer, as a politician, as the president, as a cabinet minister, as the general. That's not our ultimate dharma. Savai pumsam paro dharma. Krishna tells Vyasadeva, Sukadeva Goswami tells Maharaj Pariksit, Savai pumsam paro dharma. We have many duties related to this body. Those are called conditional. Those are called functional. And they change as the body changes. The duties change. We have certain duties in boyhood. We have certain duties in adolescence. We have certain duties when we reach maturity. We have certain duties as retirees and grandparents. Those are all functional duties. Those are all conditional duties. But because we are eternally parts and parcels of Krishna, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhu Karanai, we are eternally. However, our other duties may change according to the change of the body. What doesn't change is essentially who we are, which is we're spirit, soul, we're part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, the first duty, the primary duty of a living being is to serve Krishna. And what Krishna's will is, let me be an instrument for that. Whatever Krishna's order is, let me execute that order. That is the purpose for which we've been created. And we can't ignore the fundamental, the constitutional purpose for which we've been created and expect to have a happy life. You can be a perfect politician, perfect leader, perfect businessman, perfect business owner, perfect employee, perfect husband, perfect spouse, perfect grandparent, but without stepping into the middle of what you're created to be and to do, your whole life is nothing but a defeat. Those who have achieved a rare and valuable human form of life, the purpose of which is to honor God and enrich the lives of one's fellow living being, and who miss that, their lives have been lived uselessly without any real profit. Maharaj Ambarish does not want to offend the spirit of Ekadasi who bestows devotion. So he wants to take a little bit of food and break his fast at the exact hour. But what should happen is that Krishna put him to a heck of a test. Would you agree with me that after fasting for 1 year, you'd be a little bit hungry? I remember I've done fasts now and then. I've done 30-day juice fasts, and I've done 7-day fasts, the cleanse with the distilled water, the maple syrup, the lemon juice, and a pinch of cayenne. I've done those fasts. Towards about the 5th or 6th days, I don't know why, but all I could think of was, because when you're fasting, you get purified, and when you're eating out of control, you think of all kinds of garbage, processed foods full of fat, and ice cream and cookies and all like that. But once you fast, it purifies your very thought processes themselves. You start hankering after foods which are going to nourish you, foods which are going to give you strength, not just foods that are going to give you a sugar jump for a few minutes and then leave you depressed afterwards. So I remember just like after the 5th day, whenever my thoughts would turn to solid food, I would think of a fresh organic tomato, a slice of tomato, a little bit of Himalayan salt on it, pink Himalayan salt, on not just an ordinary whole wheat, piece of whole wheat bread, but a sprouted piece of whole wheat bread, no butter, with a nice, thick, juicy slice of organic tomato with pink Himalayan salt. That was all I could think of towards the end of my fast. I couldn't wait. I was counting down till the fast was over before I could taste that. Can you imagine how tough a test it would have been for Maharaj Ambarish after 1 year of fasting, not even taking water, to have an uninvited guest show up, a Titi, and not just any uninvited guest, but Durvasa Muni, the incarnation of Rudra, the anger feature of Lord Shiva. Now, Maharaj Ambarish was on the horns of a dilemma, an almost impossible situation. After fasting for 1 year, he did not want to miss the moment when he should break his fast. Otherwise, instead of pleasing Ekadasi and getting the gift of bhakti, he would be offending Ekadasi. And who knows when another opportunity like this would come around again. But at the same time, there are certain categories of people whom one should take to represent God. We talked about this at the beginning of our series. Mata, the mother who teaches us language. We say mother tongue because it is the mother. The father is the way at work. It's the mother whom we hear talking every day. She teaches us language. She teaches us values. He teaches us values. The father is to be Pitri, is to be treated as a representative of God because he supports, he provides a roof, he provides food on the table. The Acharya, the guru, connects us. He's our connection with God. And we have to treat the guru, acharya mam viganit navamanja padyashtaga shmita chamada nugraham. Krishna says, the acharya is my very self. And then added to those other categories is the atiti, the uninvited guest. You never know when God himself, disguised as a beggar, a bhikshu, is going to appear at your door. You have to always be ready to receive uninvited guests. Here in Utah, I believe our success has come principally because we've always tried to be hospitable to guests. We opened the present temple in 2001. We get thousands and thousands of visitors every year. So we always try to have someone at the front desk who has a nice smile, who's open, who genuinely transmits a feeling of welcome to any guest who walks through the door. Ask them, who are you? Where are you from? How did you come to be here today? And takes an interest in each and every guest. Because of that, we have almost 800 five-star reviews on Google, incidentally. Every one of our guests is practically not scheduled. They're all atitis. And I believe Krishna, even though we don't go out in public on chanting very often, even though we don't go out for book distribution very much, we feel that Krishna has blessed this project here because we do one thing and we do it well, and that is that we receive the atitis. We receive the atitis very well. Every time you receive an uninvited guest graciously, without any grudging feelings of resentment, Krishna is very pleased. Imagine you're sitting down to watch the Super Bowl. You've been waiting for this for weeks. You've got your popcorn, you've got your comforter, you've got your big gulp. You're just ready for the opening kickoff. There's a knock on the door. You go to answer it. It's your new neighbors that moved in across the street. And they thought they'd come over and spend some time with you and get to know you. Now, you have to tell them, please come in if you want to get the grace of God. This is a test for the average American. This is probably the biggest test that you could ever be given. Are you going to make some excuse? Are you going to make some excuse? Oh, we're just going out to the store, or, oh, something like my wife's not here. Or are you going to invite them in and receive them graciously? If you do so, you'll get the mercy of Krishna. Oh, the uninvited guest came in Madhavan, in Vrindavan, just at the moment when Maharaj Ambarish was going to break his fast. So he was darned if he did, darned if he didn't. If he didn't break his fast, he would insult the mother of devotion, Akadasi. If he broke his fast, he would insult Durvasa Muni, who was capable of hurling all kinds of horrible curses towards Ambarish, putting him, his family, even future generations under a dark cloud. He consulted with the Brahmins. Remember, one of the qualities of Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Ambarish, was the quality of wisdom. It's wise to seek advice. Wise means advice. He asked the Brahmins, what should I do? The Brahmin said, sip a little water. Sipping water is considered to be breaking the fast without breaking the fast, because you're not taking solid food. So he sipped water. Now, Durvasa Muni, he was a consummate yogi, had all yogic powers. After all, he's an expansion of Lord Shiva, who's the king of all yogis. He knew, his prescience was such that he knew Maharaj Ambarish had taken a little water, and he should have thought nothing of it. It should have been absolutely no big deal to him. As long as he didn't take solid food, it was not a reprimand. It was not an insult to any guests that had arrived. But note this, that in spite of all of Durvasa Muni's yogic accomplishments, he's far more advanced than any yoga teachers today. Yoga teacher, you get invited to Wanderlust, they pay you $5,000 to lead a couple of classes over the Wanderlust weekend. You're nothing compared to Durvasa Muni. You have no powers to speak of compared to Durvasa Muni. He is, in fact, the incarnation of Lord Shiva. And yet, not only did he not know enough, not only did he not have enough sense to respect a devotee of the Lord, an exalted devotee of the Lord, Mahabhagavata, not only did he have not enough sense not to respect him, he didn't even have enough sense to give him the benefit of the doubt. To think that whatever he's done it out of compassion. He's not done it by way of insulting me. No, he didn't have any of that sense. He over-exaggerated. He misunderstood intentionally, took what Maharaj Ambarish had done. I mean, after all, if Maharaj Ambarish wanted to satisfy his own personal desires, if those were in control of him, he would have taken some food. Don't you think, after fasting for a year, don't you think if he was going to sneak something and minimize the role of atiti, the role of guest, the role of hosting, don't you think he would have taken a little tomato on sprouted bread at least? No, he forgot whatever the word is. He passed over the opportunity of food after fasting for 1 year in order to sip a little water. Now, how much satisfaction do you get from sipping water? You've been fasting from food and water for a year, and you don't take solid foodstuffs at the appointed time, but you sip a little water. Now, how much personal, selfish indulgence does that indicate? And yet, Durvasa Muni completely jumped ship. He went overboard. He went off the map. He got enraged. And he was not only going to criticize Maharaj Ambarish, but he was going to kill him. He said, "You're just pretending to be a devotee. You put on a great show of devotion, of fasting, of cleaning the temple, thinking of the Lord, walking to the temple with your feet. And yet, when I was away washing up to come back, before coming back to have a good meal, you couldn't even control yourself. You couldn't even control yourself. You broke your fast without getting my permission. So I curse you to die." And he conjured up, as we know from our previous sessions, this big fiery demon which came to immolate Maharaj Ambarish. And the activities of the pure devotee are not generally understood by the non-devotees, because the devotees are working, they're cleaning, they're cooking, they're driving, they're speaking, they're painting, they're fixing cars, they're making money. It's almost impossible for the non-devotees to see what the inner motive, what makes devotees tick, because they're engaged in what are apparently mundane activities, and yet they engage in these activities with a total spirit of detachment. A devotee engaging in the things of this world, in the service of the Lord, is far more detached than an ascetic sitting in a cave somewhere. The renunciate is generally defined by all the things that he gives up. Someone could have been making money, someone could have been constructing buildings, someone could have had transportation at his fingertips, but he gave all that up to live in a cave. That's how you define renunciants, by how much they gave up. Oh, this man sitting in a cave, he used to own his own company. He used to have houses all over the world, but he gave all that up to live in a cave. That's how you define the renunciate, by how much he's renounced. And yet devotee uses, and that renunciate is renounced from 5 houses and 10 cars and whatever, and a bank balance. That's what he's renounced from. That's how he's defined. A devotee is renounced from everything in the world, from all the cars, from all the houses, from all the money, from all the wealth, from all the followers, from all the women, from all the influence. A renunciate is only defined by that which he personally has given up. But a devotee is defined, the level of his detachment is such that he's detached from everything there is in the world. Maharaj Ambarish was the ruler of Saptadvip, the 7 continents. That means to say he was sovereign over the entire world. He had no rivals. He had no competition. Everybody acknowledged him as the king. And yet he was detached from all of that. While he was the king, He ruled, he governed all of it with a spirit of detachment, and eventually wanting more Krishna consciousness, wanting to take his Krishna consciousness to a higher level, he went to the forest. He wasn't giving up anything because he'd already given up everything for the service of Krishna. When I use a watch, I'm not giving up the watch, but I'm using the watch in the service of Krishna. It's not my watch, it's Krishna's watch, my body itself. This is Krishna's body, and it's meant to be used in his service. Sarvapari vinirmaktam tattvapinam rishikesha rishiram sevanam bhakti. We have senses. These senses are given to us by the master of senses, Lord Krishna. In a sense, we are extensions, our senses are extensions of Krishna's senses. So we should let Krishna pull the strings. We should aspire to be Krishna's puppets. We'll not lose our individuality. We'll still be the individuals that Krishna created us to be, but we will be subordinate. We will be in the mood of bhaktir sevanam, serving the creator of the senses, serving the bestower of the senses in a mood of selflessness. This is the platform of total detachment from everything. One sees everything as belonging to the Lord, even this body, even these senses, even the wife, even the children, even the business. Everything is nirmama nirahankara, is owned by the Lord. And whatever the devotee does, he's automatically detached from it. The renunciate detached from certain things. He gives certain things away. Now let's consider that so-called renunciation, that detachment. Everything belongs to Krishna. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He's the creator and the owner of everything. So let's ask this question of the renunciate, the vairagi. How can you give up something which you did not own in the first place? You did not create your house. You did not create your cars. You did not create your influence that was gifted to you by Krishna. So Krishna gifted you things which you could have used in his service, and you turned up your nose at them. You shunted them away. So not only do you not get credit, but you actually get discredit for spurning the things that Krishna sent your way that could have been used in Krishna's service. Anashatasha visham yataram nirbandha Krishna somebody yukta vayadu yuche. The definition of renunciation in bhakti is that one sees everything coming from Krishna, one sees everything connected to Krishna, and one uses everything in Krishna's service in a spirit of detachment. Vairagya Vijja Nija Bhakti Yogam. Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach Vairagya Vijja. Lord Chaitanya taught Vairagya, renunciation, and Vidya, knowledge, by his personal example. Now, renunciates cultivate this spirit of detachment throughout their whole lives, taking up great pain and great trouble in order to distance themselves from temporary material possessions. Very difficult, and it's limiting. There are only certain possessions from which they learn to become detached. And Vidya, scholars, mundane speculators, they spend their whole lives poring over the scriptures, memorizing verses, steeping themselves in the philosophy. And yet neither asceticism nor scholarship will bring you to the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna is not known, is not approached, is not available to scholars, nor is he available to renunciates. He's only available to those whose 100% senses, mind, wealth, influence, whatever Krishna gives them, they engage in his service. And as soon as the devotee engages his resources in Krishna's service, Krishna gives him more. And when he engages those, Krishna gives him more. Look at Ambarish. Krishna had given him the entire of the earth. Krishna will give you whatever you can see. Krishna will give you whatever you can dream about on one condition, that you use it to honor him and to benefit your fellow man. When you have that vision of serving the all-powerful, almighty, Supreme Personality of Godhead, who owns everything, who wants the best for his parts and parcels, the sky's the limit. Anything is possible. There is nothing that can't be accomplished by someone who sincerely wants to do the will of the Lord, sincerely wants to engage one's own mind and senses and intelligence, as well as any gifts, talents, and abilities that the Lord sends his way. Anyone who wants to engage those sincerely in the service of the Lord, there is nothing which is impossible for that person. There are two effects from offering oneself as a surrendered servant to the Lord. One is that one is freed from material designation. The whole world identifies itself according to this body, the color of the body, the nationality of the body, the ethnicity of the body, the gender of the body, the species of the body. And based on this misidentification of oneself with the body, there are all kinds of duties that come. There are duties that come from being an American. There are duties that come from being a male. There are duties that come from being a father. There are duties that come from being, and as I said, these are all functional, temporary. They are conditional upon our body. And in all of this, getting overwhelmed, buried underneath all these duties, which pertain to this temporary material body, the general tendency is to forget the prime duty of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna Baliya Sejiva Bahirata Aitaiva Mayachara Shamshara. The root cause of all of our troubles is that we've forgotten our prime identity as servant of Krishna, forgotten that we've been created by Krishna in order to serve him in love and devotion. We've forgotten that, and forgetting that, we have slumped. We have some other drifted. We have some other slided in under the influence of Bahiranda, the dark, temporary, stifling, inert material energy. As soon as we forgot Krishna, just like as soon as you turn your back to the sun, you cast yourself in shadow. As soon as we forgot Krishna, we cast ourselves in shadow. We began to work in ignorance. This body is ignorance. It's matter. It's dark. It knows nothing. It's a seat of miseries. We defined ourselves as this body, and then we began to try to scrupulously do the duties that come along with this body. But no matter how well we do the duties based on a bodily designation, they're going to make us happy. A fish, take him out of water, give him a big house, a car, give him the parliamentary seat. He's never going to be happy. All he really needs is to go back into the water. So all we really need is to get back into Krishna consciousness. All we really need is to remember Krishna. Forgetting Krishna is the cause of all of our miseries. Remembering Krishna will bring us back to home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If forgetting Krishna has left us weak, disoriented, unhappy, remembering Krishna will make us strong, will make us focused, will make us blissful once again. Examples given: Bhakti Parasava Varakta Nanyatatam, Anyatra Chaisha Trika Eka Kalaha, Prapadya Manasya Dashrinatri, Pushti Pushti Shuropi Anashara. A man is weak, unhappy, disoriented because he hasn't eaten for a long time. He's suffering from lack of sustenance, caloric intake, nutrition. So as soon as he starts to eat, there are three effects which take place. He gets nourishment, he gets the energies, the calories he needs, his misery goes away, he gets relief from hunger, and replacing the misery is the pleasure of having a good meal. These are the three effects that occur to a hungry man when he starts eating. Nourishment, he gets relief from hunger, and he gets pleasure increasingly with every single bite. So similarly, there are effects, analogous effects from chanting Hare Krishna after a long fast, after being without the Supreme Personality of Godhead for who knows how many lifetimes. When one finally begins to eat, to feed the soul by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, one gets nourishment, one gets spiritual nourishment, which means to say one gets what's called pushti, one gets satisfaction, one gets what's called parashinava bhava, the direct experience of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one gets bhakti, one gets satisfaction. So these qualities, the satisfaction of bhakti, the experience of the Supreme Lord, and nourishment are analogous to the three benefits of eating food: nourishment, pleasure, and relief from hunger. And as one eats more and more, one achieves detachment with every bite, satisfying, pleasurable, strengthening bite one takes. One becomes proportionally detached from one's weakness, from one's misery, from one's hunger. Now, the more that we eat, the less interest we have in the food. Now, here is where the analogy breaks down. So far, the analogy of eating a good meal and chanting Hare Krishna, so many parallel points. But there's one point at which they diverge. That the mundaner who's eating a meal, the more he eats, the more he loses interest in his food, and the more he regains interest in the things that interested him before his hunger started to absorb and distract him. That's not the case when you're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The more you eat, the more you become detached from your pre-bhakti activities. You don't ever want to go back. You don't become satisfied by chanting and then go back to your ordinary mundane activities. Of course, it's possible to fall down. This is the Kali Yuga. There are many pitfalls, even on the royal road. God knows we've known many devotees who have failed to follow through and retreated from the path of bhakti. But the difference is that having once tasted that, one can never lose one's hankering. One may fall down due to an accident or inattention in one's devotional practices, but the taste is always there. The difference is explained in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Two children are wandering, apparently unsupervised, without any resources. But one is the son of a rich man, and the other is an orphan. Now, the orphan has really no one backing him up, no one looking over his shoulder, no one looking out for him. He's really alone. He's really in jeopardy. But the son of the rich man has hired someone to keep an eye on that boy from a distance, to pull strings when necessary. So that son of the rich man will never be in as dire a straits as the orphan. So similarly, even those who have practiced Krishna consciousness for some time and then fallen away from the practice of Krishna consciousness, they now have the special protection of the Lord. The Lord is looking after them. And having tasted Atavasya Parambojo Makana Kimanyara Sarva Ayusha, it is said, having tasted the nectar of the honey from the lotus feet of the Lord, one is never the same again. One is forever transformed. One hankers after that taste again, and at some time in the future, one will readapt, one will resume the process of devotional service. So the Lord does not let us fall. The Lord does not let us slide that easily. So that is Atavasya Parambajo Makarandaliam Kimanyara Sarvane Ayusho Yad Ashadvaya. Having gotten that vision that everything belongs to the Lord, that I am part and parcel of the Lord. The Lord created me, and my senses are extensions of his senses. Our senses are meant to be used in the way that the Lord directs us. When we use them independently, when we falsely appropriate the use of the senses, falsely claim the senses as ours, we become unhappy, we become miserable. Crude example, as citizens of the United States of America, we're all meant to follow the laws. Those laws are there for our common benefit. As soon as we think that we can do whatever we want, irrespective of the laws of the United States of America, then our life becomes very unhappy. As soon as, if, for instance, you say, well, I want to drive on the left side of the road. Why do I have to drive on the right side of the road? I'm going to take my free will and the senses that I have to drive on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road. What's going to be the immediate effect? You're going to be pulled over. You might get an accident. You're either going to end up in a hospital or jail that very day. That very day. So we try to appropriate. We try to claim ownership and control over these senses, and we try to use them in a way that we think would give us the greatest happiness. And yet the result is exactly the opposite. Prahlad Maharaj says in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, the greatest cause of unhappiness is trying for happiness. The greatest cause of our unhappiness is taking these senses, which are meant to be extensions of God's senses, which belong to God, and misappropriating them in the name of personal sense gratification. We want to indulge these senses like any sort of an animal and expect to be happy from those short-term animalistic pursuits. And the result is that the more we try to indulge ourselves, the more we try for happiness through gratifying our senses, the more miserable we become. Statistic after statistic, study after study has shown that America, the wealthiest country in the world, the people are the most unhappy. They're the most, there's so many choices. There's so many options they can take at any given moment that just the very array, the very arcade of choices at any given moment, that in itself makes one unhappy, confused. That no sooner do you make this choice than you think, well, I could have been doing that. Or you make that choice, you think I could have been doing this. Really, it's just simplifying, it's purifying, it's relaxing. We get freedom from fear, freedom from stress, freedom from anxiety to make the main thing the main thing. Just consider the basic fact that we did not create ourselves. The senses are not born of matter. Senses are not ours to use or misuse. And when we coordinate, when we connect in yoga with the service of the Lord, we achieve full satisfaction. We achieve a level of happiness that we could not achieve independently on our own. We have the full power of the Almighty flowing through us, unlimited bliss, unlimited knowledge. Now, you want to be a yogi? You want to make a show of connecting to the divine? Well, here's the example of Vyasa Muni. He was far more advanced than any yogis on the planet today. And yet he completely missed it. He completely missed the observation that Maharaj Ambarish had the greatest respect for him and in fact all living beings, had no intention of insulting him, bypassed taking a morsel of solid food after 1 year out of respect for that part and parcel of the Lord who was inhabiting the body of Vyasa Muni. Ambarish Maharaj was faultless. He had only respect and love and concern. He had only the well-being of Vyasa Muni in mind. And yet the yogi Vyasa Muni created a huge unnecessary disturbance by the fact that he was unable to recognize the exalted nature of a devotee of the Lord. And he went around with a chip on his shoulder, wanting everyone to subordinate themselves to him, to kowtow to him, to say his name. Vyasa Muni, in spite of his yogi powers, totally missed it. Later on, we'll talk tomorrow about how, having seen the mild example of Ambarish Maharaj, his forgiving nature, his loving temperament, finally it got through to Vyasa Muni, finally got through to him, and he and Ambarish became best of friends. So it's a happy ending, and well, hopefully we'll get to that tomorrow. Okay. Thank you for joining us here. Brent G. From Chile, Ogden. Good morning, Britta. Jean, Haribo, Haribo. Manasaganga. Good morning. Gary, Montana. Please have my obeisances. Divya, Josie, Bhakta Gary, and Govinda Dev. I'm honored. that after a hiatus of almost 2 weeks, you guys are still back with us. And Rob, yeah, Rob gave us some great nuggets yesterday. I hope you all saw them on our Facebook post. What do you have to share today, Rob?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I just had a few today. But excellent class. Thank you very much.
Maybe I'll have my sound down. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't hear
Can you
you
hear?
because my sound was down. Now it's up. Now it's up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Excellent class today. Thank you. So here we go. Chains of affection prevent progression. Be fully absorbed in serving the Lord. Being attached to material identity is spiritual insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Glorify with chanting and song, and Krishna will make you strong.
Good ones. Good ones. You know, not only are they good, but I can tell, you know, they're right on point. They're right on topic, which means that you're a good listener, which is a prime qualification for advancement in spiritual life.
Hare Krishna. I do my best.
Hare Krishna. Please do send them to me, and we will post them today. We have our conference call this evening. We often are on that call with Rob and Govinda Dave. Looking forward to it. We have many nice things to discuss about the recent observance of Advaita Maharaj Appearance Day. And coming up on Thursday, February 2nd, will be the celebration in Salt Lake City Temple of Nityananda Trayodasi, the Appearance Day of Lord Nityananda, who is otherwise known as Balaram Anantashesha. We'll be having a very special guest speaker for that, Radhika Raman, otherwise known as Dr. Ravi Gupta, the head of the religion department at Utah State University, and a lifelong devotee of the Lord, an amazingly pure personality and a wonderfully articulate speaker. So if you're local, please do physically come if you can. It'll be a wonderful evening, memorable evening. If you're not local, I trust that the devotees up there in Salt Lake City will put the talk, at least in some of the kirtan, on Facebook Live. So that's February 2nd, Nityananda Trayodasi up in Salt Lake City. This has been Transcendental Tuesday. Thank you all for joining me. We'll be back with more nectar tomorrow for Wisdom Wednesday. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.